With a small basket in her hands, Amy is humming and searching for mushrooms in the woods. Suddenly, she is startled as she stumbles upon a seemingly injured man lying by a huge tree. The man introduces himself as Corporal John McBurney. Turns out, he is a soldier who has fled from the war zone when the war was at its height. Amy can't leave a man dying in the middle of the woods, so she decides to take him to her school. She lives in the Farnsworth Seminary, a girls' school in Virginia, operated by Martha Farnsworth. Due to the Civil War, all the other students and staff have left the school, and now only 5 students, a teacher, Edwina Morrow, and Martha herself remain in the school. As John is unable to stand or walk on his own, Amy helps him walk back to school. On the way, Amy says that her home is Georgia, and it was her mother's idea to send her to Virginia for a while. Also, John starts to share his story of how he got injured. Meanwhile, in Farnsworth Seminary, Edwina is teaching Emily, Alicia, and Jane, while Marie is working in the garden with Martha. Upon reaching the seminary, John collapses on the ground and Amy cries out for help, calling Martha. Immediately, Martha rushes to Amy, asking what had happened, as she is telling her how she found him in the woods and that she could not leave the injured person to die there. Other students also come out. Hurriedly, Martha checks John's pulse and confirms that he is not dead yet. Then, Martha and the girls move him to the porch. She orders Amy to get the blue rag and tie it to the gate so that the patrol knows that a live Yankee has been captured. She also scolds Emily for not having a proper watch. Emily apologizes to her, as she has forgotten that it was her turn to look out. Then, Martha orders Marie to call out for a soldier if she sees one. But since John has lost a lot of blood, he is never going to make it out alive if taken away by the soldiers, so they decide to wait until he gets a bit better. Meanwhile, Martha divides the jobs among the girls as they take him inside the seminary and place him in the music room. Edwina assists Martha in treating John. While the girls are made to leave the room, Martha cuts his pants to reveal the severe wound, and metal pieces are taken out from the wound before she stitches it up. After that, Martha and Edwina come out of the room and see the girls eavesdropping outside the door. Annoyed, Martha orders the girls to not lurk around the room and sends them to the sewing room along with Edwina to continue the mending work. In the sewing room, Alicia and Jane scold Amy that she should not have brought the man who could be an enemy. Meanwhile, Martha experiences a fluttery reaction to John's body as she wipes the body clean. Just then, John wakes up to the sound of a bell ringing, which notifies them that the Union soldiers are on their way. Martha does not allow the girls to come in front of the soldiers and goes alone to greet them. As the girls watch her from the upstairs window, they contemplate if Martha has told them about John. On the other hand, Martha does not tell them about John, but instead requests spare cartridges for her revolver. Not thinking much, the soldier gives her one and leaves. The next morning, Amy goes to have a quick chat with John. Later, when Martha goes to check on John's wound, she makes it clear to John that he is an unwelcome visitor, whilst Alicia comes to lend her a hand, but she is reminded that the room is off limits for the students. As Martha is about to leave, he asks for soap and a razor. During his time there, John is polite, friendly, and sometimes flirty. His presence certainly does have an impact on the people living in the seminary. Everyone is a little dressed up and is prying for his attention by giving him presents and wearing jewelry. Edwina too is seen in a beautiful dress and hairpin that she has not worn since last Christmas. In the next scene, John calls out for Edwina when he sees her passing by the room. He feels that both he and Edwina are out of place there. Eventually, John makes her open up to him and tries to know more about her. So, he asks if she is waiting for her lover to come after the war is over, but she answers that she has none. Meanwhile, his sudden interest in her makes Edwina feel confused. Furthermore, he adds that he has not seen any beautiful person like her in his whole journey. Grabbing her hands, he asks her what her biggest wish is. After hesitating for a moment, she tells him that she wishes to be taken away from this place. Soon after that, she hurries out of the room. In the middle of the evening prayer, Alicia excuses herself and goes to the music room. Alicia, with raging teenager hormones, kisses John and wishes him good night before turning back to praying. After a few days during dinner, Martha asks the girls what they have learned from John's presence in the seminary, while Alicia responds that his presence reminds them that there is something else besides lessons. Jane states that his presence will be a reminder that the war is still going on. Similarly, Emily says that John might just be a mercenary who is paid to fight in the war. On the other hand, Amy assumes John to be a nature lover, so she expects to learn about flora and wildlife from him. Likewise, Edwina puts forward her opinion of John being a sensitive person. Later, for the evening prayer, the women and girls gathered in the music room. With John's permission, Jane is made to play the piano. He compliments Jane's skill, which brings a hint of displeasure to Alicia's face. Meanwhile, Jane's piano is accompanied by the singing girls. Just then, a series of banging is heard, which alarms them. Martha makes Edwina stay with the girls and John, while she goes to answer the door, grabbing her gun. Two of the soldiers have come to offer their assistance. As the army is about to leave the vicinity, bringing them inside, she offers them some food and makes them stay in the kitchen. Soon, she returns back and informs everyone that she has not told the soldiers about John yet, but she plans to send him away with them. Amy points out that since he has hurt his legs, he couldn't ride, and Marie talks about the possibility of the soldier shooting him on the way. The only decision that Martha could take is to let him stay until he has recovered. Later that night, Martha accompanies John for a drink. As they chat, John admires Martha's strength in operating the seminary, even in such a crisis, whilst providing shelter for the girls. When John asks if she had someone before the war, she utters she had. He immediately apologizes for her loss and admits being a coward in the face of the war. Also, he confesses to taking money to substitute for someone's place in the war. Martha sympathizes with him for doing things that are out of their character and wishes him to make his way home safe and sound. With time, John could walk slowly, but Martha insists on not pushing himself hard. As Amy is assisting him to walk outside, Alicia comes and points out that it's Amy's turn for the kitchen garden. But Alicia couldn't retort when Martha displays her authority in assigning the work among them. As she follows Amy and John to the garden, John mentions that the garden might need immediate tending. He also adds that he had quite a gardening experience in the past. Hearing this, Martha advises him to assist them during his recuperation. After that day, he starts working in the garden and surrounding woods. Oftentimes, Edwina and John exchange glances and sweet smiles while working in the field. Amy usually provides company to John, and they have developed a good relationship. He tells her that she is his best friend in this place and not to tell the secret to the other girls. He is also grateful to her for not leaving him to die in the woods when they first met. Meanwhile, Alicia is jealous of Amy being close to John. She also warns Amy not to say unkind things about them to the corporal. Being jealous, Alicia tries to grab John's attention at every opportunity she gets. One afternoon, Martha comes to check on John's wound and notifies him that he has almost recovered. When John asks if she wants him to leave now that his wound has healed, she informs him that his legs will be completely healed in just a few days. Then he can take his leave from school. But since he has no place to go, he drops a hint of letting him stay as a full-time gardener. But Martha is blunt with her words. She tells him that they will have to carry on without one after his departure. News about John's departure soon spread among the girls. They decide to make his remaining days really pleasant so that he would reconsider his decision to leave. Therefore, to show him their hospitality, the first thing they do is convince Martha to let the corporal join them for dinner. That day, Edwina goes to meet John privately, who tells her that he has missed being around her. He also tells her that his time to leave is nearing, but both of them do not want this to happen. Holding her hand, he professes his love for her and affirms having feelings for her from the first time they talked. Then, he asks her to leave with him to the west and pulls her for a kiss. At the same time, Alicia comes knocking on the door to invite him for the dinner. Next, all the ladies get ready for the luxurious dinner that night, dressed in their best dresses and adorned in accessories. The ambience is vibrant, and the girls can't stop giggling at the dinner table. Martha comments about Edwina's dress and asks her to draw her shawl to cover her shoulder. Later, John thanks them for the delicious meal and their hospitality. After dinner, Jane is in charge of playing music, and Marie and Amy dance to the tune. Meanwhile, John seizes the opportunity to compliment Edwina's look, and soon he asks if he could visit her in the evening. Just then, Martha invites John for a drink, and after a night's prayer, they all make their way to their own bedrooms. Later that night, Edwina puts on her treasured lace dress, sprays perfume, and gets ready for John. She hears footsteps just outside her room. However, her room's door still remains closed. Hence, she goes outside to find noise coming out of Alicia's room. When she opens the door, she discovers John in Alicia's bed. Her sudden entrance frightens them. As she retreats, John quickly approaches her, trying to explain the situation. In her disoriented state, she pushes him, and in an instant, John falls down a flight of stairs and loses his consciousness. This turmoil causes Martha and the other girls to come out of their room. Quickly, Martha checks on his wound and yells to bring some rope to stop the profuse bleeding. She asks what had happened, to which Alicia replies that John suddenly rushed into her room and she was taken aback. She continues to tell that Edwina came right on time and began fighting with him. Then, Martha orders all the girls to go back to their room and asks Edwina to bring rags, chloroform, and a saw. Since the wound has ruptured beyond her capabilities to treat, she decides to amputate his leg right there. After a few days, John wakes up with an ear-splitting cry. Edwina has been waiting this whole time in front of his door, and she gravely apologizes for what had happened. Soon after, Martha comes into the room and explains that they had no other options. Nevertheless, he believes that Marcia had punished him for not going to her room that night. He also calls Edwina Martha's accomplice for plotting against him. Seeing how agitated he is, they lock him up in the room. Meanwhile, all the ladies in the house are terrified of John, yelling and banging on the door. One day, Alicia comes to John's room to check on him, as she feels guilty for John losing his leg. When she asks what she can do for him, he tells her to get him the key to Martha's drawer, where she keeps her gun. After hesitating for a while, she eventually agrees to get that key for him. Next, the ladies gather around the table to discuss how to deal with the John situation. Just then, he comes down the stairs with Martha's gun and threatens them all. Soon after he leaves, Martha whispers in Amy's ear, instructing her to tie a blue rag on the gate while pretending to gather walnuts. However, despite being discreet, John catches her in action. Suddenly, a loud yelling sound is heard, immediately telling others to stay inside. Martha goes out to look for Amy. As the noise is coming out of the warehouse, she runs in that direction. Once there, she hurriedly grabs Amy and tells John to come inside the house. He follows them to the house. As soon as he enters the house, John outbursts all the suffering he had to suffer at the hands of these ladies. He threatens them to not try any sneaky move, or else they might be the ones to get the next shot. Despite Martha's begging, Edwina follows John to his room. She blocks the door and initiates intimate contact with him. In the other room, Martha and the other girls plan to get rid of John. They can neither let him back to the woods, nor can they hang him. Right at that moment, Marie mentions that the corporal loved the mushroom they had served him. She emphasizes that Amy should pick some special mushrooms for him. So it is decided that they prepare a grand supper to send him off. That night, everyone is waiting at the dining table for Edwina and John to join. Martha confirms that they have prepared this meal to commemorate his journey ahead and to show that they bear no ill intent toward him anymore. Hearing this, John thanks them for preparing the finest dinner for him. Casually, Martha asks him if he likes to try the fresh mushroom that Amy had picked in the morning. Then, he takes the bowl of mushrooms and asks Edwina if she wants some. As he is about to put some on her plate, worried that she might get poisoned, Amy let John know that Edwina does not like mushrooms. While John is gladly eating his fill, he informs the ladies that he won't be staying for long. He expresses to make up for all the troubles he has caused them in the meantime. Moments later, being unable to breathe, he starts gasping for air, and then he collapses to the floor, while Edwina looks at them with a confused look. The next morning, a blue rag is tied at the gate, and on the porch, the girls are stitching a body bag with John's dead body in it. As the movie ends, we see the girls dispose of the body right in front of the gate.